You got a text from a friend asking you to hang out this weekend, and instead of feeling excited, you felt something heavy settle in your chest. You read the message and your first instinct was not yes, but maybe not this time. You like your friends. You care about them deeply. You know that if he showed up you would probably have a good time. But something inside you resisted. Something inside you wanted to stay home. So you typed back a polite decline. You said you could not make it this time. And the moment you hit send, something unexpected happened. Your shoulders dropped. Your breathing slowed down. The room around you seemed to open up just a little bit more. You felt lighter. You felt relieved. And then almost immediately a wave of guilt washed over you. You started asking yourself uncomfortable questions. Why did you say no? Why did turning down an invitation feel so good? Does this mean you are a bad friend? Does this mean you are becoming cold? Does this mean something is wrong with you? If you have ever felt this way, I want you to know something important. There is nothing wrong with you. You are not cold. You are not broken. You are not losing your ability to care about people. What is actually happening is far more interesting and far more reassuring than you might think. Your brain is simply telling you that it needs time alone to recharge. And there is real science behind why this happens. Your brain processes social interaction differently than you might realize. Every time you are around other people, your brain is doing an enormous amount of work behind the scenes. It is reading facial expressions. It is interpreting tone of voice. It is calculating what to say next. It is monitoring the mood of the room. It is managing your own emotional responses. It is tracking multiple conversations at once. All of this is happening simultaneously without you even being aware of most of it. For some people, this processing runs at a very high level of detail and sensitivity. Their brains pick up on subtle cues that others might miss. They notice when someone's smile does not quite reach their eyes. They sense tension before anyone has said anything about it. They feel the energy of a room shift before the conversation changes. This is not a flaw. This is not being too sensitive. This is simply how their neural wiring works. But this level of processing comes at a cost. It uses energy. A lot of energy. Think of it like a phone battery. Some phones have massive batteries that can run all day with dozens of apps open. Other phones have smaller batteries that drain faster, especially when too many things are running at once. Neither phone is broken. They just have different capacities. Your brain works the same way. There is a neurotransmitter called dopamine that plays a big role in how we respond to external stimulation. Dopamine is released when we encounter new experiences, social interactions, rewards, and exciting situations. Research in neuroscience has shown that people who tend toward introversion have brains that are more sensitive to dopamine. This means that even a small amount of social stimulation can feel like a lot. It does not take much for their brains to reach a state of fullness. Compare this to someone whose brain requires more dopamine stimulation to feel satisfied. That person might need to be around people for hours before they feel energized. They might crave social gatherings because that is how their brain gets what it needs. But for someone with high dopamine sensitivity, the threshold is lower. A short conversation can feel like enough. A brief meetup can feel fulfilling. And the thought of a full evening of socializing can feel genuinely overwhelming. Not because they dislike people. Not because they are antisocial. Simply because their brain reaches its capacity faster. So when you read that text from your friend and felt heaviness instead of excitement, it was not your heart being cold. It was your brain sending you a signal. It was saying, I am already processing a lot right now. Adding more stimulation might push me past my limit. I need you to protect my resources. That heaviness is actually your brain being honest with you. Now let us talk about what happens in your brain the moment you receive an invitation. Even before you consciously decide whether to accept or decline, your brain has already started running simulations. It begins calculating what saying yes would look like. What time would you need to leave the house? What would you wear? Who else would be there? What topics might come up in conversation? How long would you stay? How would you get home? What would you do after you got back? All of these calculations begin running automatically the instant you read that message. For people with high sensitivity, these simulations run in extraordinary detail. They imagine specific conversations. They anticipate potential awkward moments. They plan exit strategies. They consider how tired they will feel afterward. All of this processing happens in seconds. And all of it costs energy. By the time you have finished reading a simple group chat message, your brain has already burned through a significant amount of fuel just thinking about what saying yes would involve. This is why the message itself can feel exhausting. You have not even gone anywhere. You have not even responded. But your brain has already lived through a version of the event in its simulation. No wonder it feels heavy. No wonder your first reaction is hesitation rather than enthusiasm. This is not overthinking in the way people usually mean when they say that word. This is your brain doing what it was designed to do, processing information thoroughly and carefully. The problem is not that you think too much. The problem is that this level of processing requires rest afterward. And your brain knows this. So it sends you a signal. That signal feels like reluctance. It feels like heaviness. It feels like I do not want to go. But what it really means is I need to conserve energy right now. Now let us talk about why you felt so relieved after saying no. When you declined the invitation, something very specific happened in your brain. All those simulations that had been running in the background. All those calculations about what the evening would look like. All those predictions about social dynamics and energy expenditure. They all stopped. In one instant, your brain went from actively processing dozens of hypothetical scenarios to processing none. The cognitive load dropped dramatically. And your body responded immediately. Your muscles relaxed because they had been subtly tensing in anticipation of social performance. Your breathing deepened because your nervous system shifted from a mild state of alert to a state of rest. The room felt bigger because your attention was no longer being consumed by internal processing. That relief you felt was not joy at avoiding your friends. It was your brain experiencing the removal of a heavy cognitive burden. There is a concept in psychology related to what happens after a decision is made. When we are stuck between two options, our brain remains in a state of tension. It is holding multiple possibilities open simultaneously, and that takes energy. The moment a decision is final, regardless of which option we choose, that tension releases. But here is the important part. If you feel significantly more relief after declining than you typically feel after accepting, that tells you something meaningful. It tells you that your brain genuinely needed the rest more than it needed the social connection in that moment. Your brain was voting for solitude. And when you honored that vote, it rewarded you with a flood of calm. This is not something to feel guilty about. This is your brain communicating clearly and you listening well. Think about what happens when you ignore that signal. When you override the heaviness and force yourself to go anyway. You show up, but you are not fully present. Your energy is low. Your patience is thin. You laugh at jokes a half second too late. You zone out during conversations. You check your phone more than usual. You count the minutes until you can leave. And when you finally get home, you are not just tired. You are completely drained. You might need an entire day to recover. That is what happens when you ignore your brain's honest communication. You end up giving your friends a depleted version of yourself. And that serves no one. Now let us talk about what happens during your alone time. When you are by yourself in a quiet space with no phone and no television and no input from the outside world, your brain does not simply shut off. In fact, something fascinating begins to happen. A network in your brain called the default mode network activates. This is a collection of brain regions that become most active when you are not focused on any external task. When you are daydreaming. When you are staring out a window. When you are lying on your bed with your eyes open thinking about nothing in particular. During these moments, your default mode network is hard at work. It is processing and organizing the experiences you have had recently. It is making sense of emotions you felt but did not have time to fully understand. It is connecting ideas that seemed unrelated. It is consolidating memories. It is helping you understand yourself better. This is not idle time. This is some of the most important cognitive work your brain does. And it can only happen when external input is minimized. This is why so many great insights come to people in the shower or during a quiet walk or in the middle of the night when they cannot sleep. It is not random. It is the default mode network finally getting the space it needs to do its work. When you decline a social invitation and spend the evening alone in quiet, you are giving your brain exactly what it needs to perform this deep processing. You are not wasting time. You are not being lazy. You are not being antisocial. You are allowing your brain to do maintenance work that keeps you functioning well. Research has shown that regular activation of the default mode network is associated with better emotional regulation, stronger sense of self, improved creativity, and greater overall psychological well-being. People who never get quiet alone time often report feeling scattered, emotionally reactive, and disconnected from themselves. Their brains never get the chance to catch up on all the processing that has been accumulating. So your alone time is not a luxury. It is a necessity. And your brain knows this even if your conscious mind has not caught up yet. But here is something important to understand about the quality of alone time. Not all solitude is equal. Being physically alone in your apartment, while scrolling through social media for 3 hours is not the same as being alone in silence for 30 minutes. When you are consuming content on your phone, your brain is still processing external input. It is still reading, still reacting, still evaluating, still comparing. The dopamine system is still being stimulated by every new post and notification and headline. Your body might be alone, but your brain is not. True restorative solitude requires minimal external input. It means putting your phone in another room. It means turning off the television. It means sitting or lying down in a quiet space and letting your mind wander without direction. It might feel boring at first. It might feel uncomfortable. We are so used to constant stimulation that silence can feel strange. But this is exactly when the magic happens. This is when your default mode network fully activates. This is when your brain begins its deepest recovery work. Research suggests that 30 minutes of true quiet solitude can be more restorative for the brain than 2 hours of being alone with a screen. The quality matters far more than the quantity. If you can build even 20 to 30 minutes of genuine quiet into your daily routine, you will likely notice significant changes. You might sleep better. You might feel less reactive to small annoyances. You might find that when you do spend time with friends, you are more present and engaged. You might notice that creative ideas come more easily. All of this happens because you gave your brain the uninterrupted processing time it needed. There is another neurotransmitter that plays a key role in understanding why alone time feels so good for some people. It is called acetylcholine. While dopamine is associated with external stimulation and reward seeking, acetylcholine is associated with internal processing, deep focus, calm reflection, and relaxation. Neuroscience research has found that people who lean toward introversion tend to have more active acetylcholine pathways in their brains. This means their brains are wired to find satisfaction and energy through internal processing rather than external stimulation. When an acetylcholine-dominant brain is in a quiet environment with minimal external input, it is essentially in its optimal charging mode. Energy is being restored. Cognitive resources are being replenished. The brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Compare this to a dopamine-dominant brain which charges best through external engagement. For that brain, being alone in a quiet room might feel draining rather than restorative. It might crave the energy of a crowd or the excitement of a new experience. Neither brain type is better or worse. They simply recharge differently. Like different devices that need different chargers. A wireless charger works great for one phone but does nothing for another that needs a cable. You would not say the cable phone is broken. You would just acknowledge it needs a different charging method. Your need for alone time is your brain's charging method. It is not a deficiency. It is a design feature. Now let us address something that many people struggle with. The difference between enjoying solitude and being cold or uncaring. These two things look similar from the outside, but they are completely different on the inside. Someone who enjoys solitude feels peaceful when alone. They feel restored. They look forward to quiet evenings. They decline invitations without distress. They re-engage with people feeling refreshed and genuinely happy to connect. Someone who is truly emotionally detached or cold does not think about their friends at all. They do not feel guilt when they decline. They do not care whether the relationship continues. They do not look forward to reconnecting later. If you are reading this and you have felt guilty about wanting alone time, that guilt itself is proof that you are not cold. Cold people do not feel guilty. The fact that you worry about whether declining makes you a bad friend shows that you care deeply about your friendships. You are not indifferent to these people. You simply need to manage your energy so that when you do show up, you can be fully present for them. There is also an important distinction between enjoying solitude and experiencing harmful isolation. If you spend time alone and afterward feel lighter, calmer, more centered, and more ready to engage with the world, that is healthy solitude. Your brain recovered. It got what it needed. But if you spend time alone and afterward feel heavier, more withdrawn, more disconnected, and less interested in people, that might be something different. That might be isolation driven by depression or anxiety. The key indicator is how you feel after the alone time. restored and ready, or more depleted and withdrawn. If it is the former, then trust your instincts. Your brain is working exactly as it should. If it is the latter, it might be worth talking to someone you trust about what you are experiencing. Most people who worry about wanting too much alone time fall clearly into the first category. They feel better after solitude. They return to social situations with more energy and presence. Their alone time makes them better friends, not worse ones. Society has built a narrative that being social is inherently good, and being alone is inherently concerning. We celebrate people who are always surrounded by others. We admire those who never turn down an invitation. We use words like outgoing and social butterfly as compliments. And we sometimes use words like loner or hermit as subtle criticisms. But this social hierarchy of personality types does not reflect the science. There is no evidence that people who prefer more alone time have worse relationships or less meaningful lives. In fact, the research often shows the opposite. People who honor their need for solitude tend to have deeper one-on-one connections. They tend to be more thoughtful listeners. They tend to bring more energy and presence to the social interactions they do choose to participate in. Quality over quantity applies to social life just as much as anything else. Seeing friends less often but being fully present each time creates stronger bonds than seeing friends constantly while running on empty. Your friends deserve the best version of you. And the best version of you might be the one who took last Tuesday off to sit in silence and let their brain recover. Saying no to one gathering is not the end of a friendship. Real friendships are resilient. They can handle space. They can handle a declined invitation. What they cannot handle as easily is one person consistently showing up exhausted and resentful because they never give themselves permission to rest. That resentment builds slowly. You start to feel annoyed by the very people you love. You start to dread plans you used to enjoy. You start to associate your friends with the feeling of being drained. And eventually you might pull away entirely. Not because you stopped caring, but because you burned out. Saying no now is how you protect your ability to say yes later with genuine enthusiasm. It is how you keep your friendships sustainable over the long term. It is an investment in the relationship, not a withdrawal from it. You do not need to explain yourself at length when you decline. You do not need to provide a detailed excuse or justify your decision. A simple response is enough. Something like "I cannot make it this time, but I would love to catch up soon." That is complete. That is respectful. That is honest. Any friend who would end a relationship over a single declined invitation was not offering you a real friendship to begin with. And the friends who truly know you will understand. They might even relate. You are likely not the only person in your friend group who sometimes needs a quiet evening at home. Many people feel this way but are afraid to admit it because they worry about being judged. By being honest about your needs, you might actually give others permission to be honest about theirs. So tonight, if you get a text inviting you somewhere, and your first feeling is that familiar heaviness, I want you to try something. Instead of immediately feeling guilty about that heaviness, try to recognize it for what it is. It is your brain telling you clearly and honestly what it needs right now. It is not a character flaw. It is not evidence of becoming cold or antisocial. It is simply information. And you get to decide what to do with that information. If you choose to decline, notice what happens afterward. Notice the relief. Notice how your body responds. Notice how the room seems to settle around you. And instead of covering that relief with guilt, try sitting with it. Let yourself feel it fully. That feeling of peace is your brain confirming that you made the right choice for yourself in that moment. And tomorrow or next week, when you do feel ready to see people, you will show up differently. You will show up with a full battery. You will show up actually wanting to be there. You will laugh more easily. You will listen more carefully. You will enjoy the conversation instead of surviving it. That is the version of you that your friends deserve. And that version only exists because you gave yourself permission to rest when you needed to. Your alone time is not selfish. It is the foundation that makes everything else in your life work better. Protect it without guilt. Honor it without shame. Your brain has been trying to tell you this for years. Maybe today is the day you finally listen,